Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. I am a first year student here at SIPA. I am a social entrepreneur and also an Ashoka fellow. When people ask me what is to be an Ashoka fellow, I will say is to have empathy and to have the energy to try to change the world, but also to change the industry of changing the world. And that's the reason that I am here at SIPA, to learn how to amplify the impact of my project in my home country, Colombia. For me, it's a great honor to introduce SIPA's Dean, who has been a great change maker and a great driving force for creating an ecosystem of innovation at SIPA. Dean's Challenge Grant is one of the examples, but there are a lot of examples of events that the Dean has been working to change and to improve the innovation at SIPA. Ladies and gentlemen, social entrepreneurs, Dean Merritt J. No.
Thank you so much. That was a great introduction, and I really appreciated you highlighting some of the things we've been trying to do over the last year since I became dean to support innovation, social entrepreneurship, and really the tremendous spirit amongst our students here to make a difference in the world in lots of different ways. So I thank you. It's really a great pleasure to host tonight's event, which would not be possible without the support of SIPA alum Kathy Hahn, who graduated in 2006 with an MPA and who is the vice president of the Brilliant International Group, and her brother, Charlie Hahn, who is the distinguished president and CEO of the Brilliant International Group, which I think calls itself BIG, if I'm not wrong. So this is the inaugural BIG Social Innovation Series, which is designed to feature luminaries, speakers, and also to undertake some practical workshops that will highlight social entrepreneurship from around the world and support students in their efforts to solve problems and really have a lasting impact. So I'm very, very grateful to the Hans for their interest in this endeavor, for their creative thinking about how we might structure our own activities. And I thank them both for flying in from Asia to be with us tonight. I'd like to invite Charlie Hahn to say a few words about their own experiences and his own perspectives around this. The company that they created really spans many jurisdictions from Shanghai, Hong Kong, Taipei, new ventures in the US, Europe, and Japan. In reading his bio, he says that early on in his life, he wanted to do something in a positive way, and he thought one way to do that would be to be the headmaster of an orphanage, which I thought was a wonderful idea. But, you know, he's really done many things in his life. He founded this Brilliant International Group, and the idea is to connect the East and the West and to create a social platform to combine culture, education, creativity, and to connect it in a way that is really fun for people who are less fortunate. And without further delay, let me invite Charlie Hahn to say a few words. And thank you so much for being with us and supporting this endeavor.
Thank you, Mary, for the introduction. And I'm honored to be here with Merritt and our keynote speaker, Bill Drayton, to inaugurate the first Hans Big Social Innovation Speaker Series. As the CEO of the Brilliant International Group, we are very happy to begin the strategic partnership with SIPA for the area of the social innovation, which consists the biennial Speak Series, the Social Innovation Fund, and also the capstone workshop project led by McKinsey General Manager Michael Kinney. This partnership is the first of its kind in the social innovation community, where an Asia-headquartered social mission-driven corporation joins efforts with an Ivy League academic institution to build a community of awareness, support, and ideas by creating programs to facilitate dialogue and knowledge about the potential of social enterprise, all with the objective of making a difference in the world. And last, I would like to thank you again, Merit and SIPA, to make everything happen. And I hope all of you enjoy a great learning experience tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And now it really is my enormous pleasure to welcome the two individuals who will be leading tonight's discussion under the Han Social Innovation Speaker Series. So thank you to the Hans. Tonight is really a fireside chat, and our moderator will be Greg Van Kirk, who is the co-founder of numerous social enterprises, including something that I think we all know called the Community Enterprise Solutions and the Social Entrepreneur Corps, and he's known for some very innovative micro-consignment model design. So I thank you, Greg, very much for being with us. He's an entrepreneur, a teacher of social enterprise, an advisor to numerous groups like USAID, the Soros Foundation, Water for People. He was named Social Entrepreneur of the Year in 2012 in Latin America at the World Economic Forum, and he's also an Ashoka Fellow. And welcome, Greg, and thank you for being here. It is an enormous pleasure for me to welcome Bill Drayton to SIPA and to Columbia. We've known each other for quite a few years, and so I just feel that this is a marvelous moment for you to come back to SIPA and for us to deepen our conversation and understanding of the just incredible work that you have done over your professional life. He is, of course, the founder and the CEO of Ashoka, which has really pioneered the field of social entrepreneurship. Harvard and Yale graduate who began his career at McKinsey. He also had quite a long stint at the Environmental Protection Agency, where he was involved in some reforms that around emissions trading, which is, I think, perhaps fair to say, the precursor to the Kyoto Protocol. He's always been a few steps ahead of where we need to be. In the 80s, while at McKinsey, he founded Ashoka, and then received an early MacArthur Fellowship, which I think was a spur to really create Ashoka into a major endeavor. And now it is the largest social entrepreneurs network worldwide, with nearly 3,000 Ashoka Fellows in 70 countries that are really putting their ideas into practice at a global scale. Ashoka provides startup financing, professional support services, connection to a network, a platform for people to work together, and he will offer some unique perspectives around its history and its development and how we should think about the challenges he's addressed. Bill Drayton has received more awards and accolades than anyone I can think I have introduced in this room. It is a remarkable history. And so I won't read them all. But please know that he is really an astonishing person of accomplishment. He's been named as one of Harvard's 100 most influential alumni. He was named one of the Utne Reader magazine's 50 visionaries who are changing the world. He's been recognized by Spain through its prestigious Prince of Asturias Award for his work promoting entrepreneurs. He's been described as a driving force behind the figure of social entrepreneurs, men and women who undertake innovation initiatives for the common good. We are really honored that you're with us here. Thank you for joining us.
There you go. Great. Thank you. Great.
You're here, Bill. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Good evening to all of you. And I have to say, I was thinking about this as just Bill and I having a conversation, and you know, obviously I know Bill, and but after hearing that introduction, now I'm extremely intimidated. So, if I could say one thing, Bill and I got the first time actually I had a chance to sit down with Bill was in a different setting. It was at the first Globalizer in 2010 in Vienna, and he asked me. He was my advisor during that, and we sat down and talked about how to scale up my work. And he asked me some very hard questions. So I figured this is my opportunity to ask you some. No, in all sincerity, I just have to start this off with a little bit of a love fest, because Ashoka has been fundamental to me personally, to me professionally, to our work. And pretty much any time Ashoka calls and asks, you know, could I help out with this or whatever, you know, if they call and ask, can you help clean out the toilets? It's, should I, you know, do you have a toothbrush or should I bring my own, right? So, so I'm extremely grateful to you and to everything that you have done and to Ashoka to begin with. So thank you very much. Well, I thought we would just start off first offering Bill the opportunity to talk a little bit about the history of social entrepreneurship, of Ashoka, talk about sort of the framework and where you see this going. So start off with the general, and then have a little bit of a back and forth, a few more specific questions, and ideally some things that are really of interest to you all. But really, this is about you. So we want to open up the floor as soon as we can to offer the opportunity for you to ask questions to Bill. So to kick things off, Bill, would you like to tell us a little bit about, you know, when you think about social entrepreneurship, Ashoka, change making, and, you know, from where you started to where you see this going? You know, maybe lead off and give us your thinking.
Okay. I just have to add that I am a New Yorker. I grew up here. I think that's a very special credential. And anything that you say it's about me, it's really Juan and Greg and the 3,000 other fellows. This is an amazing community all across the world. It would be awfully hard not to be smart if you are a part of this community. So I actually want to do something ambitious here, but very, very important, I think, for everyone in the room. If you miss a turning point, that's really a bad idea. And Detroit missed a turning point. 50 years ago, it was the top of our technology, pride, and wealth. It's now just in a catastrophic condition. Just one measure, they've been told that 40% of the buildings that remain are unrecoverable and have to be torn down, and on top of bankruptcy and everything else, that's going to cost another $1 billion. Darius, the famous Persian, the head of the superpower of that era, well, he ignored what was going on in this primitive little tribe beyond even the Greeks, the Macedonians. Well, Macedonians just came up with the phalanx, the modern phalanx, which was the predecessor of the Roman legions. And that, you know what happened? The great Persian army with all its elephants and whatnot met the small Greek force that had walked all across the Middle East, and 6 hours later, Darius was fleeing for his life. He missed a turning point. Well, we all have stories like this. You can't afford to miss a turning point, and you especially can't afford to miss a really big turning point. Not only because it's a really bad idea, but also when a really big turning point comes, and we're in one right now, especially the people in this room have an opportunity to really contribute to it. But you've got to see it and have the courage to see it. Turning points catch people by surprise. You know, things have been going along, the old system, all those categories are in your head, and people are usually a little bit scared to talk about thinking anything that other people aren't talking about. And so all of a sudden, this turning point comes. And what I hope to do in this opening is to help us see what that turning point is, and then bring it around to what it means for the university, for all organizations, and for each of us individually in all aspects of our lives. This is really, I think, the biggest turning point people have been through. All through our history, we essentially had some change, but so little that it didn't pay to focus on it. And so the focus was on efficiency and repetition. Think about law firms, think about assembly lines. That's about efficiency and repetition. And education was designed to feed into that. But there's a teeny little problem. The rate of change has been going up exponentially since 1700. That's just a mathematical fact. And the demand for repetition is going down at roughly the same rate. So this whole system, which was designed to serve a world of repetition, is now failing. Failing really badly. And the successful parts of the world, Bangalore, Silicon Valley, Google, the Jesuits, Loyola, and Xavier created an island of this new way of doing things 490 years ago. It's built around change, which is not just different from repetition, it's the opposite. And so you've got to, every human organization now has to play in a different game. And for any individual to be able to be contributive, and also, to put it more starkly, not to be pushed out, individuals have to have a very different set of skills to play in this opposite game. This is a very big turning point, and we've been building up to it for 300 years, and we're now at the point, those curves are going really fast. Much of the world has already made the turn. We just haven't quite articulated it yet. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, being a part of the Ashoka community is a huge privilege. When you have 3,000 of the world's best social entrepreneurs, and a social entrepreneur is an entrepreneur, that means you're changing the pattern across society. The word social means that from deep within, you're committed to the good of all, which means, among other things, you care about everything, you're seeing everything. That's a huge competitive advantage, as well as an ethical, a very different situation. 3,000 of the world's best social entrepreneurs. Over half have changed national policy within 5 years of launch. 3/4 have changed the pattern in their field at the national level within 5 years of launch. So we don't have to be, some sort of genius. If you're in this community, patterns are obvious. So there are over 700 of the 3,000 fellows focused on children and young people. And over 95% put children and young people in charge. Well, that's not the way schools are run. That's not the way young people have been treated. But when you do that, we can see all over the world in 85 countries, all sorts of different circumstances, even the traditional measures of math and some language shoot up. And a lot of other very important things are happening. So that's a pattern. It's obvious. So you put that together, and I'll go into this at greater length, you can really begin to see where we're going. And then we have to figure out how do we work together to actually get there. So I'm going to start first with a little bit on social entrepreneurs, because I understand that there's an issue about what is a social entrepreneur and how do we deal with social enterprise. And social entrepreneurs are very, very important in this world that's upon us. That's a reason. There's a reason this field was born over the last 35 years. When we started, there wasn't even a word, social entrepreneur. We had to make it up. In this world, they're absolutely critical. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction, why that's important, and then move into this turning point, this historical moment that we're in, so that we have a deeper feel for that and can have a deeper conversation about it, and then swing around, what does this mean for you, any organization you care about, the university. Okay, so social entrepreneurs. Ask yourself, what is the most powerful force in the world? Well, I think it's pretty clear. It's a big pattern change idea, but only if it's in the hands of a really great entrepreneur. It's that combination, regardless of time or subject matter, that starts all the big changes and creates a self-multiplying process. Then you add the word social, as I said, that's very special. Let me explain why. There are lots of entrepreneurs who are not focused on the good of all. Perfectly good people, but they're playing the game they were told to play. Their interests, their family's interests, the shareholders' interests, some ideological or religious point of view. So they're serving partial ends, or they just don't see the whole. So this is not so great. Periodically, as things move faster and faster, that dynamic will have society going off the cliff. So right now, we're losing privacy really fast. We've fought for it for centuries because it's really important for creativity and freedom. But there are three forces at work that are hurting privacy. One, we need preventive surveillance. A few people can do an awful lot of damage, and it's too late to catch them after the fact. Second, Moore's law. You know, if the cost of connecting the dots goes down by 30% a year, and that compounds, we are at the point where Google and everyone else can connect all the dots, and this is the ultimate dream of the Tsar's secret police. They couldn't do it, but now we can. And then third, the business model for most people in the digital world is give them something they want, get information, sell the information. Well, that's not great for privacy. Well, no one planned this, but the result of these three forces reinforcing one another is really bad for a fundamental value. Well, who is going to deal with that? That's where the social entrepreneurs come in. When things get stuck or things are going off in the wrong direction, you need the entrepreneurs, people who really will change the whole system, who are committed to the good of all, who are thinking about the good of all the time. So that's why this group of people is more important with every passing year. As the rate of change goes up, these people become more important. And our ability to work together, collaborative entrepreneurship, is very new. We've been figuring out how to do this over the last decade. We're now doing it. We need to be able to do that because the challenges are not getting less. All right, so you have two examples here right in front of you of Ashoka Fellows. Let me just give you one or two other quickly. One story is going to tie into this larger theme. Mary Gordon, Canadian fellow, her work is going on just a few blocks from here. She's in 22 countries. She's national policy in 2 countries. And had Scotland become a country, it would have been 3. She started as a teacher in schools in Toronto. And she gave herself permission to see that there was a problem. The kids coming to her classroom increasingly did not know how to deal with other kids that made them uncomfortable, except with aggression. And of course, that invites aggression back. And every time kids go through that cycle, it gets deeper. And their future is going away. In the world we're going into, you have to have extraordinary skills of working together. And aggression isn't an extraordinary skill of working together. And it's also not exactly making for a great school. So she gave herself permission, this is what entrepreneurs do, not just to fix it for her class, but to fix it for all schools. So that better be pretty simple. Well, we know it works. Bullying rates, we have pathetically crude measures of empathy in children. But bullying rates come down, and 3 years later, it stays down. There's some early evidence that the architecture of the mind changes. So what does she do? Anyone here could have figured this out. There's no astrophysics here. This is one of the points I want to be making. She said, okay, how can I find a way for young children to grasp empathy-based ethics, which they have to have, it's going to be really simple, that's not going to upset people, that schools all over the world will adopt. Schools are not really terribly good at adopting things. Okay. She asks for only 2 or 3 hours a month for 8 months. The younger the kids, the better. Teacher sits at the back of the room. In comes the professor. The professor starts the school year at 2 to 4 months old, wears a little t-shirt. The professor resides on a green blanket with mom. And the first graders or third graders have to figure out, what is the professor saying? And then what is the professor feeling? There's a whole series of exercises here. And it's very effective. Now, anyone here could have solved that problem if you gave yourself permission to ask the question and just persist. The kids are also observing the mother-child relationship, which is an extraordinary level of empathetic skill. So that's one person who gave herself permission to take on something that is incredibly important, and she's moving it out across the world. So in Africa, 30 to 40% of the pharmaceuticals are fakes. Well, no one knows the exact number, but those are some samples in Lagos and a few other areas. So Bright Simon, a Ghanaian fellow, figured out, oh, now everyone seems to have cell phones. How could we solve this problem? So he talks to the pharmaceutical companies and the telephone service. You get a free line. And all of a sudden, when you go to buy this bottle that looks like what you're trying to get, you can now check the number by calling this free hotline that talks to the pharmaceutical company, and all of a sudden, this picture starts changing. All right, if you have 3,000 people, like Juan and Greg and Mary and Bright, you'd really be blind if you didn't see patterns. I told you how powerful these people are. Over half have changed national policy in 5 years. There's lots of measures. Social entrepreneurship is possible. It's clear. We know what it is. All right, so this is a key building block. Now, let me shift to what is this turning point in the history? So there's 2 central facts. No one can ignore these facts. These are facts. Since 1700, the rate of change has been escalating exponentially. This is a mathematically true fact. I did not do the math, so you can rely on it. The other curve is going in the opposite direction. And we don't have good math on it, but I think it looks suspiciously like the mirror going in the opposite direction, and that's the demand for people doing repetitive functions. We had automation for physical repetition, now it's intellectual. So the managing partner, McKinsey, who used to run the program in China, told me this story, so it must be true, said that Alibaba started a lending program. You probably know whether this is true or not, so correct me if it's wrong. And they had, when he was telling this story, about $3.5 billion of loans outstanding, but and I think the loans were up to $10,000. Total staff, 200. They're not relying on lending officers. This is a self-correcting algorithm. Well, think about how many jobs just went out the window around the world. Think about the last time you took out a car loan and what was involved. The New Yorker had a fascinating article last summer, a year ago this summer, about how LiDAR has, in their judgment, is replacing 85% of what field archaeologists do. IBM says that their Watson technology, it'll have this sort of effect in many fields, but in the health field, it'll eliminate 50 to 60% of what doctors and nurses do in the next 5 or so years. All right, so rate of change going up exponentially, demand for repetition, now including intellectual repetition, going away. There'll still be repetition, we'll still have to wash the dishes, but the game now is change making. All right, so the old game was A fits B because they keep doing the same thing. But that doesn't work anymore because A is changing, and A is bumping everyone around A. And they're bumping everyone around them. And so suddenly we're living in a world not where repetition reinforces repetition, but where change begets and accelerates change. That's the environment that everyone is in, and it's getting that way faster and faster. And the bumping is the spread of the bumping is getting broader, faster, and faster. An idea that came up in Bangladesh would never have affected New York or Brazil 20 years ago. It might have affected 10 years ago. It might as well be around the corner today. That's part of this escalation of the rate of change. All right, so what does that mean for your organization? Any organization you care about. Well, it means that you need everyone in your organization to be part of 1,000 eyes, looking at the part of the world they're seeing it, understanding it, seeing what the possible futures are. The 1,000 eyes have to think together, and then they've got to spot new areas for creating value. And those new areas, you need a new team of teams because it's not the old stuff, you're doing a new thing. And you've got to take them wherever they come, whatever sector, whatever geography, otherwise you're going to not be competitive. Well, now, everything about what I've said requires people to have a very different set of skills. The old system was you were trained in a set of skills and a set of rules, and then you went to work in a structure that was designed for you to be able to keep repeating that as a banker or a barber or whatever it is. Well, that worked in a world where there was almost no change. But now it doesn't work. It's falling apart. It's obviously falling apart. And so what do we need? So there's a new paradigm for growing up. And we are now very actively going through the collaborative entrepreneurship process of working together to get this new paradigm in place. So what is the paradigm? So it fits the biological pattern of how humans develop. So young children, this is what Mary, the Canadian fellow, is about, must master, and these words are very careful, cognitive empathy-based ethics. This is, now we all have mirror neurons, so do elephants. We feel other people's pain, elephants feel other elephants' pain. That is not what we're talking about. Cognitive empathy, you've got to consciously understand all the people around you, layers out, further and further into the future as the future comes at you faster and faster. And by the way, people don't live in one job and one family and one community. It's this kaleidoscope of all these teams changing faster and faster, and you've got to understand not just individuals but groups and combinations, and it's all changing. There's no way that mirror neurons do that. You have to learn how to do this. This is complicated, and it gets more complicated every year as the rate of change accelerates, and the complexity accelerates, the richness accelerates. Any young child today who is not mastering this and practicing it is going to be marginalized in life, as is their community. This is the worst thing you can do to any human being, is deny them the opportunity to be a part of society. Now, why is that? Because remember that curve going up exponentially? Well, that means that the rules cover less and less every year. For the first time in human history, you cannot be a good person just by diligently following the rules. No matter how hard you try, if you don't have cognitive empathy-based ethics, you are going to hurt people, you're going to disrupt groups. And I'm sorry, if you hurt me, I don't care if you're a brilliant astrophysicist. I want you out of my life, and it's your fault, and whatever group you belong to, I'm going to be cautious about dealing with. We can see that going on around us right now. Prejudice is going up, not down. Groups that, right here in this city, we have cultures of don't be a victim, respond with aggression. This is not working, and those folks are being pushed off the edge. All right, so the second, so every child must master and practice cognitive empathy-based ethics, and then the next one is really key. Every teen, a young person, the brain rewires somewhere between 11 and 13. Doesn't happen in one day. As you know, it's sort of a little bit uneven, but it happens. And then you have a young person, not a child. That's why we have the sacred thread ceremony in India, and bar mitzvah, and confirmation, and tribal rights. We've recognized this all cultures. Young people are not children. They're totally ready to be change makers. The only way that they can be change makers as adults is if they are practicing it during those years. And this is my last item before getting into just a few checklists of what this means. This is actually my favorite story of recent months. We had a meeting of about 350 U.S. Ashoka Youth Ventures. This is young people who've had their own dream, building their own team, changing their community or school or whatever. So I sit down at lunch, and I got 3 youth ventures across the table, one at my left. So there's an African-American woman from Oakland who set up a bicycle system that brings vegetables and whatnot into the food desert of Oakland, and she's worked out arrangements with convenience and liquor stores. This empty chair to my right, this tiny young woman comes over, sits down, introduces herself, and quickly says, I'm 12, because she hates being perceived as 8 because she's small. Okay, so I ask her, what is your venture? Well, my brother is autistic. And all through school, I would cry when he was mistreated. But now we've fixed that. Oh, how did you fix that? Well, we get together, and whenever we see a special student being mistreated, we figure out what to do and then we intervene, and we're very persistent. Now, I guarantee you that if any of you had been there, you would have not one scintilla of doubt that this young woman has her PhD in the most important skill she has to have in life to be a real contributor in a world of change. She is a change maker. She knows it. She's never going to be afraid of anything. She has formed a team. She's had an idea. She's changed her school. And you can feel it in her. Now, the school she's in is a poor school in an Appalachian-like area in north central Mass. The plastics industry went away in the 70s and nothing has come back. I asked her one other question. How many student groups are there in Shirley Middle School, her school? Oh, over 50. Well, if 0.1% of all the middle schools in the world have 50 student organizations, I'd be stunned. But when she walked into that school, she had a problem. And all the other kids, everyone said, well, you know, you've got a problem, you solve it. You build a team, look around you. That's how the world works. And she did. Now, we have to get to the point where every middle and high school in the world is that sort of a world where it is normal to behave this way, to be a change maker, to care, to organize, to encourage everyone else, because that's the world this generation of young people are going to be living in. And every country right now has a choice. Are you going to leapfrog ahead and have this generation of children and young people have these skills so they are able to play in this world defined by change, not repetition, or not? And if the answer is no, then America or South Africa or Poland or whoever misses the boat has just bought a one-way ticket to Detroit. Except it's not going to take 50 years, exponential curve, 10 or 15 years. Be more specific. If we have 1 or 2% of the population with these skills, okay, Google can hire 30,000 creative entrepreneurial engineers. But how far down into the economy can that go? If you've got a 1,000-person company in Poland or in Thailand and a 1,000-person company here, and they have 700 or 800 change makers, and our 1,000-person companies have 4 or 5, there's no way that we're going to be able to compete. We're out of the competition. It's just completely fundamental. Right? So now this has huge implications for everyone here. This is a good news story. This is a much better world. There's no way that the problems can outrun the solutions when everyone is a change maker and we know how to work together. It's just dramatically more effective. Second, it is inherently more equal because everyone is powerful. Everyone can give. And then third, and I think this is actually the most important, everyone in this room has the ability to give. We're not going to be afraid. We know how to deal with change. Please give us a problem and we'll solve it. That's not where most people in the world are. And it's very, very hard for us to understand and imagine what it is like when you don't understand this and you don't have these skills and everything is moving faster and faster and there's no demand for what you have to offer and you can't figure it out and prejudice against you and your group is going up. It is awful. So when we make this transition, we make a transition to a world where everyone gets to express love and respect in action. That's the gift our parents and our schools and our community gave us. And I just think it's unconscionable to know that we can have everyone have that gift and not do it. So everyone here can really make a big contribution. This is one of those, when you get to this turning point, are you going to be Darius or are you going to be Alexander? And everyone here can make that choice, can make a really big contribution. I was telling the story of Mary. Mary is not an astrophysicist. She just cared, and she had the inner self-confidence to see the problem and then to figure out an answer, and then just persist until she started changing the world. Everyone here can do that. You can spot a problem. You can spot an opportunity. Well, you've got to figure out what you're going to do with it. So, do you have the skills? Are you developing the skills? Are you helping your friends see this moment? Are you helping them develop the skills? Everyone here, I'm sure, has a young person, a child they care about, a sister, a niece, a grandchild. And are you really helping that young person, that child, make this transition? Everyone here can do that. And then this is a room full of people, of leaders. That means you are going to be responsible for, right away, helping these organizations you care about see this moment and see what it has to do. You can do that. It's not easy, but you can do that. And then finally, everyone here can help the world through the tipping process of the whole society seeing this moment in history. We can influence the thought process. The university is centrally located to do this. This school can help with that. You can talk to people who are able to talk to large numbers of people, writers, publishers, the digital creatives. Everyone here knows some of these people. So the faster we get through this tipping process where everyone sees what the new game is and sees what they can do. I mean, once a parent understands, the new game is change, not repetition. My 6-year-old daughter must master cognitive empathy-based ethics. The next time that 6-year-old daughter hits the 4-year-old younger brother, you have something in addition to punishment. You can put your arm around her, as my parents did to me frequently, I'm embarrassed to tell you, and basically say, well, now, how do you think so-and-so, in this case the younger brother, felt when you did that? And do it in a way that this is, you're really, you know, and that child knows that you are trying to help them master something that's really important. So, thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. Well, now my piece of paper is a total mess with notes. Yeah. So no, thank you. It's always wonderful to, always a learning experience. I guess, you know, building off of that, looking at Ashoka when you founded Ashoka, and sort of the evolution of Ashoka over time as it's been evolving and changing with this change, and you know, as a very dynamic organization. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, in the beginning it was very social entrepreneur centric, right? The Ashoka Fellows, and that the Ashoka Fellows were that main focus of the change making. And then over time, as you speak to young people in empathy, and everyone a change maker, you know, it's really grown from that. And so, so I'd like to hear. I mean, are the Ashoka Fellows now? Is it more of a sort of a reference point of, you know, Mary Gordon or Bright, right? Or are folks like that? These are examples. I mean, certainly incredible change making going on, but examples that the young change makers can look to in certain regards, that can sort of learn this change making and pass on that knowledge. And so are the Ashoka Fellows play a different role now than they did when you first started off and when you first conceived of all of this?
This requires a little bit of history, I'm afraid. So I said when we started, of course there were people who had been social entrepreneurs before. Maria Montessori, Florence Nightingale. but they were isolated. It was really 1980 that the whole field came into its own. And, and we were very conscious about introducing the field of social entrepreneurship. So if we selected anyone as an Ashoka Fellow who wasn't, we were hurting ourselves really badly, because people learn from stories. And but we were also working with universities, and it was a very conscious process so that all across the world people have this category in their head. Now, not everyone is going to be a great entrepreneur who will change the pattern across the continent, which is our minimum standard for election as a fellow. But everyone can and actually must be a change maker. And social entrepreneurs not only are doing something important in their own work, but they're role models. I mean, think about all the people who look at your work or look at Mary's work. And they say, well, you know, if he can do that, well, I can do something. And when they see more of these examples. Second, almost every significant social entrepreneur is a mass recruiter and facilitator of local change makers. So this is one of the few differences with business. Our normal structure is you have the entrepreneur, you have a pretty modest-sized organization, and beyond it, there's a really big movement. So Mary has a small organization. If you look at the number of directly paid staff, you know, it's growing. But if you look at the thousands and thousands of people who are standing up in Winnipeg or the Isle of Wight, or I mean, all sorts of places, Japan, South Africa, they say, you know, our kids need this. Mary has made her idea as simple and safe and accessible, and where necessary, supported with materials, etc., as possible. Supported in part because she won't deal with people who aren't doing the real thing. Now think what's happening in Winnipeg or Johannesburg or just north of here. Mary isn't running those classes or those schools. People in those communities had to stand up and say, we want this, we're going to make it happen. And they have to work at it. And they have to recruit other people to work with them. So I think virtually every social entrepreneur their work is important. But at this moment in history especially, this is one of the invisible mechanisms that is leading to the everyone a change maker world. And I don't think you can divide these. We can't do our work without all the local change makers. The local change makers, as they multiply, make the social entrepreneurs' work a lot easier. The historical divisions are going away. You know, why do we have a very difficult business-social division? Again, it's history. From the end of the Roman Empire to 1700, there was no growth in average per capita income in the West. Went up and down with weather cycles. And then 20%, 200%, 740% over the last 3 centuries. So you have a curve that goes like this, and something happened there. And what happened was that business, not government and not the social sector, which is dependent on government, started the everyone a change maker revolution. It said, anybody, a very key word, anybody, you have a better idea, you make it work, we will make you rich and happy and we'll respect you and we'll copy you. And that is what broke us out of 1,300 years of nothing. Well, now around 1980, and why did the social half not do it? Because government has structured itself as a monopoly. Doesn't have to. It's just a historical phenomenon that, you know, governments came from kings and they were monopolies, and so they just continued. So it's the last big sector that is still not entrepreneurial and competitive. It's a huge problem for the world. Giant clunking bureaucracies. But the historical gap between business and society is going away. From 1980 to now, the citizen sector has grown explosively. We're generating jobs, paid jobs, at 2.5 to 3 times the rate of the rest of the OECD economy. Why is that? Because we're catching up in 3 decades on 3 centuries of falling behind in terms of productivity and scale and now globalization. Well, one of the consequences is that business and society are now entrepreneurial and competitive. They will have large, complicated, sophisticated organizations, and we can actually work together. So this, when you think about the organizational model, remember, fluid, no walls. You put together new teams of teams, well, you can't have walls. Right, so here, the social entrepreneurs and the business entrepreneurs come together. And so that's another distinction that goes away. Now, this does not mean that the social entrepreneurs are any less important. For the reasons I was suggesting there, you know, our work is not defined by the subject matter. Think about education. Every possible organization in the world is in education. Religious, ideological, for profit, you know, all the governments at all levels. So you can't say it belongs to this sector or that sector, but you can tell Mary Gordon is a social entrepreneur because all she cares about is the good of all. That's from deep within who she is, and she is an entrepreneur. There, you know, I will refrain from mentioning certain, shall we say, for-profit universities that have been something of a horrendous scam that have hurt a lot of people here. Well, we need the social entrepreneurs. So, now, the final point, collaborative entrepreneurship. This is us working together. This has never been done before. It's taken us 10 years to figure out how to do this. Now, when we work together, what are we trying to do? We are identifying, this is what every entrepreneur does, the big thing that needs to be changed and what the answer is. So, every child must master empathy, and every young person better be practicing being a change maker. This is a completely new paradigm for growing up. This is like saying 100 years ago, everyone, same first word, must master written language. This was a huge upset for the monopoly Latin, Sanskrit, and all those monopoly people. They didn't like this. In England, they burned William Tinsdale at the stake. They went and grabbed him in Holland, brought him back and burned him on the stake because he published the Bible in English. This is just a few hundred years ago. Then we said society's getting so complicated, we really need everyone to be able to read instruction manuals and street signs and whatnot. And we need everyone to be able to read and write. And we've more or less done that. What we're saying is that at this point, and we means 750 odd Ashoka Fellows dealing with children and young people, the pattern, Mary is just one of these, and I give you, if we had the time, I could give you lots of stories, and you'll see quickly how they begin to fit together. So we've identified this, both because it comes out of the patterns of the work of the fellows. Remember, 95% of the fellows literally put young people and children in charge. We have lots of we know how to do that. When you think about the everyone a change maker world, it requires the same thing. So the patterns fit together. That gives us a lot of confidence in this new paradigm. But then we have to actually make it happen. So we have to do what every entrepreneur has to do, is figure out the entrepreneurial jujitsu. You know, we cannot go and force 2.5 million schools to change. You know, the 700 of us, we're very nice people, but that's never going to happen. So here is a concept that we've come to be able to articulate much better in the last couple of years. There are 3 different levels of impact. Direct service. You do need teachers in the classroom. The measure is how many kids were educated for how long. You need people to dig wells. How many wells were dug? Next level, the entrepreneur's level, pattern change. That's why I never gave you a statistic about how many people Ashoka Fellows serve directly. We know it's amazing, but we think it's a very bad figure to use because that's not what entrepreneurs are trying to do. Their goal is to change the pattern. So what proportion have changed policy or changed the pattern within 5 years? What proportion have had independent institutions copy their innovation, which is over 90% in 5 years? Those are measurements of pattern change. Now, the third level is mindset change. And that's the most powerful. And the measures are very different. It's a different game. And so when we're introducing social entrepreneurship, that's a mindset change. Helping the world see that the new game is change, not repetition. Helping the world see that there's a new framework that kids have got to grow up differently. Those are framework changes, mindset changes. The measures we use for this are what proportion of fill in the blank, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, graduates of this school, kids in this community know that they're change makers. No. Well, they can't know if they don't really have these skills, and they can't really have the skills unless they've been practicing them. The second measure is what proportion of the stakeholders in this school system, know that they don't have a good school. They have a really bad school if they don't have an everyone a change maker culture. So when the 11 and 12-year-old comes in, they have the experience of this young woman in Shirley. It's normal to have these skills. Now, those are 2 very specific measures of a mindset change. When we start work with a change maker school, we measure what proportion of the kids graduating in the year before know that they're change makers. Now then, we hope 3 years later we'll have a very different number. Okay, so we know what the goal is. We got this new paradigm. We know what the measure is. Then how do we actually make this happen? So this is, you've got to start with a trigger. What's the least number of sources that you have to set in motion that when they're set in motion will create a self-multiplying dynamic that will draw in more forces? And then, of course, within those minimum number of forces, you have to choose the best possible partners. So to tip the world for this new paradigm of growing up, there are roughly 10 places you've got to tip, of which the US is one. And so we've been experimenting for the last 2 years, and we think the trigger is 60 schools. We have the 60 schools. They've applied. They've been through a selection process, representing all the different types of kids in different types of schools and neighborhoods. That's why 60. We'd be happy if it were smaller, but just given the diversity of the country, we just have to have that. Then 30 writers and publishers, and a team of Ashoka Fellows who co-lead this. And so that's 91 teams. You know, little us, we can deal with 91 teams. But we're creating a team of teams architecture. We're not giving the schools a curriculum. We're not telling them what to do. We have chosen a team in each school that shares with us the goal. They know this is the new reality. And they know that they have got to make their community and their school walk through this change. And they're committed to make that happen. And they also know they're on a big playing field. If they can make it work there, then they can talk to Bloomberg or Univision or whatever. That's the, you begin to see how the forces work together. We connect them to the work of the 700 fellows, totally available. We connect them to one another. So a school in New York can be working with a changemakers school in India and sharing ideas. And so that is hugely powerful for the fellows. Mary Gordon loves this. You know, we have given her the ability to move her idea and methodology out that she would never have by herself. And Jill Violette, who's a Ashoka Fellow from California, play work, she believes in play. Well, because she became part of this, she suddenly realized that, oh, group play is really good for kids practicing empathy and practicing teamwork. Oh, that's part of the, you know, and Mary meets Jill, and you can see how the pieces start fitting together. So this is really good for the fellows. It's the best thing, most important thing we've ever done in terms of the fellowship. We do a lot of things, but, you know, 1 out of 3 U.S. and North American fellows are actively engaged in introducing this new paradigm for growing up because they want it in their community. They think it's important, and we like working together. So it comes from the fellows. We would never have seen it. They're co-leading it. This is us entrepreneuring together, which is, as the rate of change speeds up, our ability to work together. We're creating the team of teams. That's what this is. And as I said earlier, you absolutely have to have the entrepreneurs who care about the good of all. And when we get together, you think about it, that's really powerful. But also think about it, there's a lot of problems that are emerging. And you need that, but it's constantly pulling us back to the good of all, to the center.
Okay, no, and I guess what I'll do is maybe I'll ask just one more question and then I'll open it up to the audience. Is within all of that, you know, thinking about sort of the requirements, so to speak, of this change making, and just pulling out from some of the examples and things you've been touching on. You know, it's if you think about the audience and people who want to be change makers. You know, it's about having that focus on social impact first. And I'm just going to go through a few things. Giving yourself permission to look at things in a different way, right? Not being focused on, did I serve 5 people today, although that's incredibly important, but how am I actually looking at changing patterns and how am I changing the way things have been done? Having something, we think about scale, right? You talked about Mary, and certainly I've fallen on my face because I've made things too complex, but making things simple. And simple so that they can be replicable and building in a team of teams. And in that simplicity, as I see Ashoka Fellows and social entrepreneurs that I truly admire, they have this simple, seemingly crazy, counterintuitive idea that's that trigger. And you know, I know Jill, when children go out and play and you know, they're at recess, they solve problems through rock, paper, scissors. And Mary, you know, dresses up a little baby with a shirt that says the professor. You know, Mohammed Yunus, that the idea that low-income women would pay back at a rate higher than wealthy people do. All crazy ideas, but at the end of the day, very simple. And that's what created the trigger, and that's what made things happen. If you were to give advice to folks here who are looking to get up and get started and get to here, what are those things that you think, that you see from, in all of your experience working with social entrepreneurs and change makers, sort of those first steps, those things to really focus on in the beginning, besides maybe some of these other things that you've touched upon? Any sort of advice for all of us?
Well, the biggest barrier is our own self-doubt. And the people around contribute to that a lot. So you got to be very polite and kind, understand where that's coming from. But, if someone didn't give themselves permission and they see you doing it, that raises something that's very uncomfortable for them. And so they somewhat subconsciously may say, well, no, you can't do that. That's not practical. And, when you're in the midst of a transition like this, where most people don't see it yet, that's the whole point. A framework change, a mindset change. By definition, you're surrounded by people who don't see it. And you've got to have the courage to withstand the people who really don't want to be reminded that they didn't do it. And just the fact that people are very afraid to be out ahead. I think that's the biggest barrier. And counterbalance that, we're so close to the tipping point here that this is going to get easier. And so I just urge everyone, please give yourself permission. You can figure it out. That's not the problem. You look it through all 3,000 fellows. I assure you that everyone in this room could have figured out how to solve the problem. The key is you've got to give yourself permission to see, something is wrong with this whole financing, human structure. What is wrong here? Everything I know, how would it work? You can do that. Now, of course, there's an apprenticeship period. It takes time to figure out how society works. The earlier you start, the better. This is back to the youth venture point. I just share a personal story. I grew up here in Manhattan. I had two parents who both did something completely unreasonable when they were 19, which is probably why they got together eventually. My mother was in Australia, and she came here as a cellist in the middle of the Depression. This is very impractical, and my dad dropped out of college to become an explorer in the Sahara, and he almost got himself killed, but he didn't, and he pursued this. So I had that advantage. In New York, you don't have station wagons. Once you're allowed to cross the street, you have a free bus and subway pass. This is amazing. And this is a city that has had immigrants come for 400 years and succeed, and it has a built-up culture of can. New Yorkers walk 15% faster than other Americans. This is true.
Only 15?
This is based on why do we have pedestrian traffic jams in Times Square? And it's because the non-New Yorkers in New York, it's impossible. So, and I grew up at the time of the civil rights movement. There are a lot of things that were really wonderful. But look, you take one look at me, you can figure out I was no good at football. I was always the crashie and those sorts of things, and that wears thin pretty quickly. I never understood why I was being tortured with math and Latin and certain other subjects. But I really loved history and geography, how society works. And so, I wasn't exactly a star at sports or at school. Apparently, this is very normal. You think about the 90% of the kids in a class, they're not the stars. So I started things. The newspaper, to begin with, was, all this is going to sound very antique, hand-typed, with carbon paper. Does anyone know what carbon paper is? This is impressive. Well, I could make 5 copies by really pounding on the keyboards. And then I saved up and got a mimeograph machine, and the mimeograph machine was a revolution, and the paper went from 2 pages to 15 and eventually became 50 pages, and it started having kids from, this is elementary schools across the city. Well, to make this work, it was perfectly obvious to me that I had to go and get ads, and I had to deal with kids in other schools, et cetera, et cetera. So I pursued doing that. Well, that meant I wasn't always where I was supposed to be. When my mother died, I found this wad of correspondence between my parents and the principal of the school, Mr. Hubble. And it basically went like this. Dear Mr. Hubble, why is our 5th grade student not in your school and not in our home? Question mark. Mr. Hubble back to my parents. You've got to have faith in your son. This is important for him. And he'll carry it off. And please don't show that you're anxious. My parents tried very hard not to show they were anxious. Now, I was incredibly lucky. I didn't have to have a prolonged battle over this, which I would have probably lost. And all these things, and I just am so grateful. And I see all these young people in the Youth Venture Program all around the world. And these stories they're always incredibly moving. A Mongolian young woman who's a student in Japan, a high school student. And, she goes to school, she has mandatory sports, she can't pay for juku, which all the other kids go off to this incredible cramming thing that takes all night. So she has to go and work in a Chinese restaurant, and she gets back. And so she's a youth venture. And her idea is, it's really hard to not be Japanese in Japan because the Japanese are not always really good at dealing with, and they're not very direct about it. So her website, kids share with one another who's for real, who isn't for real. And and she's got this wonderfully clever idea that they advertise Chinese-speaking people coming to Japan. Do you want a guide who can speak Chinese and actually knows what's going on? Well, it's very hard for people who are not Japanese to get jobs in Japan. So this woman is going to be a powerhouse. I'm 100% sure of it. And every time you have that experience, it is just very moving because you're seeing the future right there. And, I just think this goes right to the heart of what we're talking about. We really mean everyone a change maker. It's not everyone in the 1%, it's everybody. And everyone has a right to be able to express love and respect in action. All the prophets told us, all the scientists tell us that is what makes for health and longevity and happiness. And we are denying it to most people right now. And it's getting worse. 20 to 80% of the world's people are just dropping off the edge as this new game comes in. That's something we need to work on. And I don't think there's a gap between social entrepreneurs and change makers. It's all part, but the social entrepreneurs are really important.
You're building an ecosystem of change,
yes.
Right? And everybody has a role to play within that ecosystem.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, maybe if we have a few minutes for questions. I don't know if we have a microphone or that we can. Yes, and maybe we could have a couple people. If a few people ask questions, raise your hand, and then we'll just get a couple questions and then note those down, and then Bill can address those at the same time, or there may be things that are woven together.
Cool.
Please.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Lana Walsh. I'm a second-year SEPA student concentrating in humanitarian policy. I had the privilege to work with Bill at Ashoka from 2005 to 2008. So I'm really thrilled that you've come to visit us here at SEPA, and it's really great to see you again. I have kind of a two-part question. So since working at Ashoka, I went on to work with USAID and the UN and international organizations that exposed me to other ways of solving development problems. And I've always thought about Ashoka's model, and I wonder about how it may be quite a Western idea of how to create social change, since it's based on very individual action, with social entrepreneurs as economic actors who provide these fixes to particular problems, and maybe some are able to build that kind of broad-based approach that's needed to achieve a wider, more comprehensive set of goals. Fellows individually may be working through their organizations to address some of these more structural issues, but I'm interested to know more about how Ashoka has worked towards measuring the impact of its investment in these broad-based social changes. So I guess kind of two parts. One, about the model and being Western, and two, about measuring impact.
Okay. Maybe before getting to that, Bill, yeah, if we keep it. Thank you. We have some other, we can get some other questions.
Hi, my name is Lily. I'm also second year. It was a pleasure to listen to you. My question is, apart from changemakers and adapting to change constantly, how likely do you think it is that traditional businesses will incorporate empathy into their practices more, and would that be of interest to their investors?
Okay, thank you. And maybe one more?
Thanks a lot for coming today, Bill. I'm Howard Lee. I'm a first-year MPA student here. Just a very quick question from me. In this great new world that you described where everyone's a change maker, what role does government play, given that we're studying public affairs? And how can we help facilitate these changes beyond education as well into all aspects of life? Thanks.
Okay. And maybe, can you all hear me? Yeah? Okay, so maybe we'll hold off there. Maybe if I could paraphrase a little bit some of this. I think one of the things, going back to your question, I think that Mary, talking about Mary, talking about Jill, talking about so many of these other examples of change makers, certainly I think there's a misconception oftentimes that when you say social entrepreneur, that entrepreneur means business, not an approach to solving a social problem. So it's not about just business. It can be government, it can be universities, it can be what have you. But I guess one of the things is if you look at the Ashoka model, we had the question of is this or social entrepreneurs, is this sort of a Western idea to a certain extent, or do you see it as that way? I think then we get into measuring success, which you talked about with regards to policy change and pattern, but maybe a little bit more of how do you know that your investment in a social entrepreneur has paid off? And then I think that it gets into a little bit about indicators of success, I think, in business to a certain extent. Sorry to borrow from for sort of popular culture here, but can businesses change themselves, or what I would say, to paraphrase this, and I don't mean to do this incorrectly, I mean, are we talking about this sort of Moneyball? We're talking, is social entrepreneurship kind of sabermetrics in saying that businesses, the way that they've worked and the way that the indicators of success in the past, that serves a certain purpose, but if we really want to create success and change and improve standards of living in this dynamic world, our indicators need to change. We need to use sabermetrics, which is social entrepreneurship, or can business just do it on its own, do you think? So that's a mouthful. You ready?
I will try to be somewhat succinct, which is difficult, but I'll try. So, Western. We have Ashoka Fellows in 85 countries on every continent, and except for the Mideast, the results are the same. For 15 years, we have over half, it's actually from 49 to 60%, so 1 year is beneath half, but have changed national policy within 5 years. So the underlying historical facts, the rate of change going up, the demand, those are facts that affect everyone equally. And what we've seen is that whenever the wraps get off and a society opens up, you get a wave of people coming up. So the generals went away in Brazil, and within 5 years we had an incredible wave of social entrepreneurs. You can see that all over the world, time and time, regardless of the culture. The only area where the results are less good is the Middle East, where it's 29%. What proportion have changed national policy within 5 years is 29%. And we are disturbed about this. The 500 million people in the Arabic-speaking world have, this is 4 years old statistics, so I hope it's more now, only 62,000 citizen groups. Argentina has 140,000. It's seriously behind. But with that exception, we get the same results everywhere. The other point that's, I think, really important here is that this is not some sort of Western individualist something. Expressing love and respect in action. This is not selfish-oriented. Cognitive empathy-based ethics, living your life for the good of all. This is not against community, quite to the contrary. To be effective in this world, people have to work together in these constantly changing fluid teams of teams. People have to have these skills. Again, what are the skills? Cognitive empathy-based empathy. That is the foundational skill. That is not some sort of Wild West cowboy deal. Teamwork. A completely different type of leadership. In a team of teams where everyone is envisaging and enabling and taking, and you need them to, leadership is not telling people what to do. It's helping everyone think together, okay, we agree this is the goal. Everyone is constantly thinking, how can we do this better? Everyone is trying to help everyone else individually and collectively. Leading a team, let alone a team of teams, let alone a constantly changing team of teams, is not telling people what to do. That was the old game. A few people, William Taylor and all that work measurement stuff, you set people up and you'll turn these 3 screws for the next 20 years or whatever. Gone. This is a very collegial. It's intended to be. You need it to be. So it is not the Wild West. It's just a really serious, this is needed everywhere and it's coming up everywhere. So measuring impact. The first is these 3 different levels. Direct service, changing the pattern across society, and mindset change. You cannot mix these 3 up. And there's a lot of confusion and damage done by doing that. I have come to hate the phrase scaling up, because what that means is more direct service. And when you say to an entrepreneur, well, we expect you to have twice as many students next year, that is completely the wrong way to think and communicate. And we deal with that all the time with these stupid funders and government agencies and whatnot. And if I may make a request, please, get people to stop this. It's very harmful. You want to judge entrepreneurs on entrepreneurial goals, and you want to judge people whose goal is changing a mindset. Are they changing the mindset? Those are different things, and they're different games, and you have to play them differently. So that's the first level of measuring impact. And then, once that's clear, I don't think it's terribly hard to figure out, digging wells, well, how many wells, how deep, what quality, helping kids master empathy. Well, right now we have absolutely pathetic measures, bullying rates. Well, we hope that universities, as the new game becomes clear, we need better measurements of different types of kids and circumstances in terms of empathetic skills. There's a lot of work to be done on measurement. When you go through a mindset change, a frame change like this, everything has to be reworked. You just cannot use the old language, the old measurements. It's a mess. All right, so we'll...
So really quickly, role of business,
yes,
role of government, and then we'll get a couple more questions. We've got about 5 minutes, and then we'll...
Okay, so business either is changing or it is dying. Same thing for everyone else. And you can see some companies, Procter & Gamble used to be known as the Kremlin on the Ohio because they did everything internally. They decided about 7 years ago that at least for new product and service development, that doesn't work. They will never have the capacity internally to figure out the new products and services. So they said, we've got to look everywhere in the world for whatever ideas exist, wherever they are. Now that's a company, very traditional, I'm choosing them particularly for that reason, that has figured out that if they don't start playing this game, they're out of it. IBM has made the same. Now, Google is not a traditional business, but it's a really good business. They're doing very well, thank you. They have very consciously built a team of teams architecture. We talk with them about this all the time. They have 3,000 internal teams. We have 3,000 fellows who have organizations, who have movements. And they're not defined in terms of a product. They're defined in terms of we have a team of teams that are competitive, creative, somewhat entrepreneurial engineers, and we go and see where we find whatever the biggest potential value is. Right? So I think business either is changing or is going to die. And the same thing is true of religion or any other sector. Now, government is a very special case. We absolutely need to have government. No competitive sector represents everybody. No one elected Steve Jobs or Florence Nightingale. Government represents everybody. We absolutely need government representing everyone. It's got to be smart, however. It's got to think ahead. It's got to say, what's the structure of where society will be in the future? What are the incentives? What are the safeguards we need? And right now, we're not getting that. We just blew off, I don't know how many trillions of dollars because we have moth-eaten, almost destroyed 1930s financial regulatory systems. It's pathetic, and nothing has changed. Almost nothing. That's a slight overstatement, but not much. Now, we need government to perform better. And there's no reason that government can't. So I think one of our biggest challenges, the universities, the citizen sector, business, we've all got to help government escape being the last big primitive sector that can't even understand this game. It's demoralizing to people in government. Now, I worked at EPA. I really, and that was an agency that got a lot done. It was the second great public health revolution, 14 major statutes about all the man-made pollutants, reinventing the regulatory process so it's not just command and control, but command counter-proposal and control. That's what the bubble does. That's now moved way beyond the environment to other fields. Well, we need government, but how can we help government make this transition? And we're paying a huge, huge price because we aren't doing that. And part of it is that we're scared of government. We don't want to deal with it. It's frustrating. It drives us nuts. But we have to.
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll close on that note. And I it seems from all of this there is a lot of opportunity for everybody to go out and change make, right? But I'd like to thank you very much, Bill, and thank you all for having us and for providing us with this opportunity to have this conversation. And everybody have a very nice evening, but thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Great.
All righty.